Hey everybody, Tag Life Done Free. Hey, today I thought I would put out a quick video to share with you guys my thoughts on the Great Reset. And, unfortunately, it's already here. And unfortunately, these things are being practiced every single day. So if you're interested in my thoughts on the Great Reset, come on, let's check it out. The Great Reset is upon us. One of the essential building blocks to the Great Reset is what they call collective ownership. I don't know if you've ever heard this term, collective ownership, but what a wonderful thought, right? Everybody would be an owner. Nobody's going to get left out, right? Now, it's hard to argue that the corporate and the government world, hasn't preyed on people for all of time. So have we actually found the magic pill? Collective ownership would make everybody a stakeholder, right? Sound good? I'm curious though, if everybody owns everything, wouldn't that mean that nobody owns anything? Well, except those people who are in charge? I mean, they're not even hiding it, right? Have you ever heard the phrase that came out a while ago that said, "You will own nothing and be happy"? See, the Great Reset is an idea that was put forward by the World Economic Forum to fundamentally restructure the global economy in the wake of COVID-19. See, COVID created this perfect environment for a rebuild of our social and economic systems. Now, I don't know whether or not COVID was created for the Great Reset or if it was just an issue of opportunity. But either way, the 1.2 million people who have died due to COVID is seen as a cheap price to pay for the opportunity to rebuild the global system. The idea of the Great Reset is being sold to the populace under the agenda of kindness. This ideology is being proposed for our good and the greater good. If this sales pitch doesn't make the hair stand up on your neck, you are clearly not paying attention to history. This proposal is essentially a group of exceptionally powerful individuals, predominantly in the banking, finance, and business sector. And these people have teamed up with government leadership to create a system that will guarantee the equality of outcome. I like to repeat sentences because I think they're super powerful. So I want to do this one again. These people have teamed up with government leadership to create a system that will guarantee the equality of outcome. They will accomplish this through what they call collective ownership. Here's the great news, those guys, right? How wonderful would it be that you get a life where people in power get to decide what a perfect world looks like? This collectiveness idea takes personal ownership out of the equation. Remember, you will own nothing, and you will be happy. I hate to tell you this, but not only are they serious, okay, it's already here. Take the blue pill and it offers you the safety of the lion at the zoo. You get meals, you get medical care, and all your needs are met. George Washington said that there is no basic human right without property rights. See, the other choice is a simple one. Take the red pill, and it assumes that you will only win or lose based upon your own individual efforts. This choice is the lion of the Serengeti. Nothing is provided. In fact, the chances are your life will be shorter because you must compete with the world to achieve purpose. If we are dependent on the greater power for everything, then you are not free. If you place your freedom in the control of the state, you put yourself in a very bad spot. See, this has been repeated many, many times in history. Can any of you think of another time in history where the state owned everything? How about the serfs of Europe? Were they happy? They owned nothing, right? They just simply contributed to the king or representative, right? This representative or king would then determine what the serf could or could not have, who they could marry, and what class they were in. Remember the permanente, right? They had no rights. George Washington believed that all property rights ensured that other rights to some degree. The idea of this collective utopia could also be called servitude. Economist and historian Dr. Thomas Sowell said humans evaluate political systems, and the mistake of evaluating them based on their kindly sounding intentions rather than on the outcomes after the fact. And he proposed the idea that our world, politics, would look very different if we had to judge each thing that the politicians and governments did based on their outcomes instead of their intentions. This intention stage is remarkably easy for smooth politicians to stand up and say warm things. The Affordable Care Act, the Patriot Act, to name a few. This is what we are hearing from the proponents of the Great Reset. They all talk about the collectivism and the communal living and how nobody will own anything. Is it possible that nobody can own anything? I mean, is that even, possible? And if this is true, then who determines the use of everything? Will it be an elected representative? Doesn't this mean that the government controls everything? Doesn't this mean we've just given them more control? Consider the possibility that if everyone owns everything, who will be hired to manage it? Will it be the corporations? And if you take the ownership out of the hands of the public and you put it in the hands of, a few multinational corporations working together with government, isn't this the very definition of fascism? Businesses and governments collaborating. Doesn't this sound like such a good thing, right? Except I ask you, who owns the rules? Who enforces what's right and wrong? I'm sure we can all agree that government and corporations have always had the people's best interest at heart, right? What happens when there's a financial incentive to be corrupt? What could possibly go wrong? Who owns the rules, we ask? Well, the rules to this new reality, they are already here. I recently did a video on the ESG system, environmental, social, and governance. These are the very rules they will use to control all property. And yes, this includes yours. The Greater Reset has very chilling implications. If you own nothing, who gets to determine where you live, what you eat, or even who you marry? Because of collective ownership, the government will have absolute control. And remember, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Believe it or not, I actually believe these are fairly small problems in the grand scheme of things. See, our ability to critique and build and grow society are essential to the growth of a society. With these rules, with the ESG system, with the Great Reset, innovation stops, development stops. All that is left is the perfect soldier as designed many years ago. I did a video on that too. If you disobey or do something against their version of environmental, social, and governance, they will just simply ghost you. You will be turned off and left to join the ever-growing population of the serfs. This only works because you own nothing. Do you remember Mrs. Thatcher? So Mrs. Thatcher famously embarked on this project to expand human liberty in her nation by trying to ensure a much broad-based private and individual ownership of as much property as possible. See, apparently she agreed with George Washington, who said it's property rights that prop up freedom. When we elevate the group over the sanctity of the individual, we are dealing with a game that has many, many times been destructive to the human species. The good news is you already own property, right? It'll be someone else's problem, right? I would really encourage you to listen to their words and think big. You will own nothing and be happy. See, this is not going to allow for you to continue to own what your family has built for generations. The simple statement, if we take them at their word, again, is you will own nothing and you will be happy. See, I would argue one of the very best things we do as a society is we try to prop up the next generation, right? We try to help them so they don't have to start at zero. Under this plan, they will require that each generation will reset. And then based on their environmental, social, and governance score, they will be placed into society based on their compliance. In just 2 generations, private property will cease to exist. And in 4, they will own nothing, and they will be happy. At that time, you and I will probably be dead, but our kin will be 100% dependent on the welfare state. And this poses some very serious problems for our future. See, today, people who live in welfare have disproportionate rates of divorce and alcoholism and drug abuse, violence, and even life expectancy. If you look at people who are self-sufficient, self-sustaining, employed, or even running their own businesses, that's just simply not the case. So one of the things that I think people are not considering here is under a paradigm in which nobody owns anything, we all become a group of people living under the welfare state. And what a great way to damage the health and psyche of human beings. Because the human beings don't prosper in this environment. We could end poverty as we know it today, but it would be counter to the collective ownership. We could improve health of everybody today, but it would be counter to the collective ownership agenda. As I have mentioned in previous videos, to include, my ESG video, this collective ownership model will be enforced by the corporations. And if you do business with them, you are the problem. I would really encourage all of you to change the way we look at welfare and the welfare state. For many people, it's by their choice, but for many others, they're simply nothing more than a victim of the system. They are the early casualties in the battle for our freedom. Vote with your dollar, practice civil, peaceful disobedience, and build community, because at the end of the day,